Hello once again. Welcome to another video. And this time I will be doing a double feature review. This past weekend I watched both RoboCop and RoboCop 2 back to back, so figured I'd just do a double review. Starting with the first RoboCop, of course. RoboCop 1987, directed by Paul Verhoeven. I'm not too familiar with a lot of his movies outside of RoboCop and Total Recall, but this RoboCop, it's a classic. I watched it and I still enjoyed it as much as I did back in the day when I saw it for the first time. RoboCop, of course, played by Peter Weller, and then his partner, Officer Lewis, played by Nancy Allen, who was also from Carrie, also as a Mean Girl Chris. She's Officer Lewis in it, Murphy's partner. And yeah, the story, of course, Murphy just transfers in from out of state, and of course, we're set in a dystopian future where there's all these robots and everything, and the police are ran by OCP, which is a company that develops weapons technology. And Dick Jones, who is a senior member of the company, is presenting his product, which is called Ed 209, which is a droid that is supposed to be basically able to replace humans in doing police work and military later. But during the test, it has a glitch and winds up killing someone. So, sorry, the cat wanted to get some attention, but yeah. And then of course a younger member of the company named Bob Morton, who's behind RoboCop, sees this as an opportunity to push his product while he sees Dick Jones as a defect in his product. And then, of course, Dick Jones is not happy about this at all and is warning Bob Morton to watch himself. Of course, he doesn't listen. And then we get a report of this serial killer named Clarence, who's running this gang that's producing drugs in mass quantities, and Murphy and Lewis are in pursuit of him and his gang, and they wind up going into their hideout without backup, and then this turns out to be a bad idea because Lewis gets taken out pretty quickly, and then Murphy finds himself surrounded by the whole gang, and they all just go trigger happy on him, first by shooting off his hand, and then later his arm, part of his head, and yeah, he looked real bad after that. It was definitely a real bloody scene. And then, of course, OCP just uses this as an opportunity to take him against his will for something he didn't volunteer for and turn him into the RoboCop. And then they, of course, blank his memory out because they don't view him as human anymore. He's just a product to them. So they can't have him remembering who he is. And at first, he's just a very effective machine. He does what he's supposed to do and very durable. Basically no guns can do anything to him. His only flaw, though, is he can't move very quickly. So, outside of just got his gun, he has some trouble. And that will, of course, happen later on. But anyway, and eventually he just starts to remember things when he gets a report when he stops at a gas station and finds one of the people was part of Clarence's gang that killed him was the guy robbing the gas station, and then he says to him, "Hey, I know you, man. You're dead. We killed you." And then this starts to trigger something in Murphy to start making him remember who he is. He then and then he later, of course, has Lewis telling him, "Murphy, it's you." And then he just he knows what's going on, and he goes by his old home and sees that his wife and son have gone on. They left the place, and because of course, like they thought he was dead, so they had to just move on with their lives at that point. Yeah, it's kind of a really depressing scene too, where he's having all those flashbacks of his son and his wife, and yeah, and he doesn't even know whether he even is human at this point or anymore. Because he eventually does wind up going after Clarence and gets information from him, and Clarence spills to him that he works for Dick Jones, the senior officer of OCP. And then, of course, prior to that, Dick Jones finally just took out his revenge on Bob Morton, who was partying, doing coke and whatnot. And Clarence shows up and drops him that recording of Dick Jones and telling him how much it's a shame that they could have been friends, but he had to take him out like that. But RoboCop gets to Clarence. Clarence ends up ratting Dick Jones out, and then he kind of gets the idea he's going to go after Dick Jones, but all the officers have that tracing unit on him, so Dick Jones knows he's coming. And then RoboCop finds himself a victim of the Directive 4, which was Dick Jones's own work, which prevents him from arresting a senior officer of the company. So he starts going into a shutdown mode. And then Jones just decides to finish him off right there with Ed 209. RoboCop is good. He's able to get out of there, and Ed 209 has the trouble of not being able to walk downstairs. So it tries and then just falls over flat on its back and can't get up. But Dick Jones, of course, had pretty much called in the whole police force to just terminate the RoboCop project, and now then RoboCop finds himself about to get destroyed now by the whole force. Even though some cops were like, "He's one of us, we can't do this," but they had no say in the matter. And but Murphy was able to use his resourcefulness and get out of there. And then Lewis helped him. They wind up going to an industrial side of town where they hide out in a building, and Murphy decides to remove his helmet because he wants to see his face again. And then he asks Lewis what happened to his wife and son, and she, of course, tells him, "Yeah, she thought you were dead. She didn't know what to do anymore, so she just left." During this time, Dick Jones gets Clarence out of prison and tells him, "Because you told him everything and he has it all recorded, you got to take care of him now." And he makes him that deal where he's going to have some of the biggest clientele of his drugs, and then he just says he's going to need some weapons, which Dick Jones provides him, which is like high grade military weapons. So Clarence winds up getting his whole gang together, and then they try and go after RoboCop because they have that tracker on him now. And then it gets into that final battle between Clarence and RoboCop here, and it pretty much is just some some quick good action where RoboCop has his decoy and then he fires at them and the one guy, of course, goes into the toxic waste and he's melting away. Clarence winds up hitting him with the car. And then the final finale goes into him and Clarence just in a duel, but and then there's the guy, of course, up in the crane that dumps some scrap on him, but that doesn't really do anything. And Clarence ends up getting stabbed in the neck by RoboCop's pincher thing. And and then he has one more job to do. He's got to take down Dick Jones now. So he goes to the OCP office and winds up using the Cobra gun weapons to destroy the Ed 209 unit that's in security. And he then just goes into the office and says that Dick Jones is a murderer and he can't act against a senior officer of the company. But of course, he has everything recorded. So, and the old man tells him, "Well, these are some big charges. What's your evidence?" And then he presents the recording of Dick Jones saying, "I had to kill Bob Morton because he made a mistake, and it's time to erase that mistake." And then Dick Jones freaks out, grabs the old man, and says he wants a helicopter for him and his hostage. And the old man just is like, "Jones, you're fired. Dick, you're fired." And then RoboCop's just like, "Thank you." He shoots him, falls out the window, splat. And then the old man just asks him, "What's your name, officer?" "Murphy." So good ending to RoboCop 1. It's a classic. And of course it's most loved for having all the satire of predicting all the things that people back in the 80s were scared of that eventually came true anyway. Well, yeah, yeah, fun, great movie. Love the music. It's a classic. I remember I saw it for the first time when I was like 10. And yeah, overall, I'd give it a 8 out of 10. I have a few issues with it that I think it doesn't really hold up today with like the movements of RoboCop, how he's too slow sometimes, but that's just a nitpick. But anyway, we can get into RoboCop 2 now. RoboCop 2, 1990, directed by someone named Irvin Kershner. I don't know anything about him, so not familiar with any of his other work. But again, we have Peter Weller returning as RoboCop and Nancy Allen returning as Lewis. This one is a bit of a mixed bag for me. I don't think it's that bad, but it's not really that good either. It doesn't even really feel so much like a sequel, so much as just like another RoboCop movie that kind of just reuses some bits of some themes that you found in the first movie, and RoboCop as a character seems to kind of go backwards in this one. Uh, anyway, yeah, it starts off. Of course, we're still set in this dystopian future. Cops are on strike, except for RoboCop because he doesn't really need money or anything. Because he's a cyborg. And then of course Lewis is still helping him too. So they're like some of the only two cops that in the whole city right now while everyone's on strike. And because of that, this gang is producing this drug called Nuke. They've pretty much taken over the whole city, and it's all in mayhem. And the mayor's trying to pressure OCP into start paying the cops again so they can take care of this gang, but OCP's not interested because they're only worried about money. and of course they see that RoboCop, because he remembers his wife now as Alex Murphy, he's started watching his wife again, and they say that she's suing the company, and they say that he can't remember that he's human at all, and he has to acknowledge he's just a machine. And then we get a quick little scene of his wife trying to talk to him, saying, Murphy, doesn't matter what they've done to you, but then he just asks her to touch him, and she says he feels cold, and he just says, this was built to honor him, your husband's dead. And that's pretty much the end of all that. We never see anything about his wife again. And yeah, and then we just get a little bit of him going after that gang, and which is led by this guy named Kane. And he's got this his right hand man, which is this 12-year-old kid named Hob, which is I don't really like the character Hob at all. He's a and then but anyway, yeah, he so it just pretty much is about them going after this gang, and RoboCop eventually finds out that there's this dirty cop named Officer Duffy who has been working with the Newt gang, and and then RoboCop interrogates him to telling him who he's working for, and then tells him where to find Kane. Goes after Kane, and then of course the gang all they all ambush him and shoot his hand off that was his gun hand. This is where you see that without his gun, he's pretty much useless in these movies, because they pretty much make quick work out of him with an electroshocker, and then later a magnet, where they pick him up, put him on a table, and start stabbing him and tearing him apart. And then they take him back to the cops and out at the picket line, and just throw his parts out in the street. And doctors also and the doctors are don't want to put him back online, because they're in the process of trying to introduce a new product to replace him called RoboCop 2, which which has had many failures so far, where it just goes crazy and starts killing people. And then there's this doctor lady. I can't remember her character's name. I think I would have wrote it down, but she's just not that interesting of a character. Where she says that, yeah, cops are not the best candidates for the job, and she gets this idea to start looking for convicts, and the scientists behind it don't want to do that because they think it's a bad idea, but she pretty much is in complete control of everything, because she knows how to manipulate the old man. And yeah, her whole character though is pretty boring, and pretty much all the corporate characters, like the old man Johnson and this woman, I find them all to be kind of boring characters that they're not really what I watched the movie for. But anyway, yeah, so eventually they want and eventually the woman character, I forget what her name was, she she gets the idea to reprogram RoboCop, wipe his memory of being Alex Murphy clean, just like in the first movie. But this time, it's so ridiculous, this part, where he's just going around, say, telling kids, "Oh, what about mom and dad?" and all this, and it's so corny, and it doesn't even last very long, so it felt kind of pointless. Where Lewis is just like, "Yeah, it's OCP. They did something to you," and then and then he they get told, and then she finds out that he has no choice, so he has to obey these program blockers that are in him. And then he overhears something about electroshock treatment, and that wakes him up, and he goes outside, give to an electrical box, gives himself an electroshock treatment, and now he remembers who he is again. And then he's like, "Well, are we cops or what?" And says that, hey, he's going after Kane again, and he convinced all the cops, regardless of being on strike, to just go after Kane, and they did, and took out most of his gang, and Kane himself got shot and messed up, and he wasn't. And the news said he wasn't expected to survive. And Hobb took this as an opportunity to just take over the gang. Where and then there's the other woman who's part of the gang. I can't remember her character's name either. Another throwaway character though. Like that's the thing. None of the characters in this movie are really worth even remembering. I don't think hardly. And but yeah, she tells him that yeah, Kane will kill both of us. But Hobb is just like fuck Kane. He's dead anyway. And that woman who behind the RoboCop 2 project, she goes to Kane in his hospital bed, and she makes a call saying our patient has just died. And then Kane's like uh-oh, no, no. And then she just shuts off his heart rate, and then he becomes the candidate for the RoboCop 2. His brain is removed from his head and placed into the RoboCop 2, and she says that he can be controlled with the nuke, and she's going to give him a canister of nuke, but he first has to go after his old gang who is working with the city and the mayor in order to get the cops back to work and off strike. But yeah, so he goes there and pretty much kills all of his old gang and everyone except the mayor who escapes through the sewer. And then we're back to and then RoboCop shows up and Hobb is on his deathbed and and RoboCop takes sympathy with him and Hobb tells him it was bigger than you, it was Kane. And he said, like, I'm dying, you know about that. It really sucks. And RoboCop's just like, yes. So then RoboCop 2 is like put on is displayed as a presented as a prize at OC as OCP announced they were now taking over the whole city and they were gonna bulldoze neighborhoods because who needs neighborhoods? They just cause more crime. And then RoboCop shows up and he's like, Kane, let's step outside. And then the woman is like, oh, you're obsolete. Get out of here. And then Kane just takes the remote away from her that she was using to control him and smashes it. And then we just have a big action fight between RoboCop and Kane, and which goes on for like pretty much the rest of the movie. Just a whole action scene where which eventually just results in, of course, RoboCop ripping the brain out of Kane and just smashing it, and then Kane is officially dead at that point. But the old man ends up getting away with everything, and he admits he's just gonna throw that woman under the bus in the court case, so no skin off his bones. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of the movie. Yeah, like I said, RoboCop 2, it just was not anywhere near as good as the first one. It kind of just felt like a mindless action movie compared to the first one. None of the characters in it are really interesting. Hell, I can't even remember most of their names, other than Kane and Officer Duffy and That's it. That's it. Like, yeah, these were just this one. I know it used to be a very hated movie from what I remember, but then it gained a cult following where people started saying it's underrated. And I don't know if it's underrated, but I don't know if it's really that bad either, especially compared to RoboCop 3, which is a movie I'll probably never watch again, in all honesty. Haven't seen it in years, don't care. And yeah, but RoboCop 2, I'd give it 5 out of 10. It has entertaining action, and I think Peter Weller and Nancy Allen are still pretty good in it. But other than that, not it doesn't have much going for it. Yeah, but RoboCop, it's still something I have a soft spot for. Cause I saw the original movie when I was 10 years old and watched it a whole lot then. But yeah, like I said, something about RoboCop that doesn't hold up is just how without his gun, he's pretty much useless because he walks so slow. All he can do is just a straight arm movement. So you take the gun away, then his enemies gain a major advantage over him, which is a real problem since he's supposed to be better than the actual cops, but not the case. But yeah, these are both movies I'd recommend checking out. Oh well, one detail I forgot to mention is RoboCop 2. Funny enough, well, the screenplay was written by Frank Miller, who of course we know from Marvel, Daredevil comics, and Dark Knight Returns, Sin City, Rusty the Big Guy, and Rusty the Boy Robot, stuff like that. 300. Yeah, just thought that I always thought that was a funny coincidence that he was a screenwriter on it. Yeah, but anyway, that's about all I got. Thanks for watching. Thank you for anyone who's still subscribed. If you're watching, thank you. And if you're just someone who happened to randomly come by this video and saw it, I appreciate that too. And consider subscribing because I plan to make more videos. Of course, I you get really busy, so when I'm able to make them is always up in the air. But yeah, and drop a comment, tell me what you think about either of these movies, and till next time.